the game started very oddly, actually. There was something that DeBoer mentioned he had never seen before. And for those of you that may have been at the game or even on TV, and there was a little bit of confusion as to what happened, what really happened, it was not the helmet communications that were going wrong. Apparently, the actual headsets on the sideline for Western Kentucky completely went out. Their headsets completely went out. The problem with that is Alabama has our offensive coordinator up in the press box. And apparently, the NCAA rule is if one sideline's headset goes out, the other sideline can't use their headsets either. So it was a full headset issue. And then what happened is the headsets came back online, so they thought they were ready to resume, and then they actually went back offline. And so they hurried and got our offensive coordinator down from the booth and were able to get him on the sideline, and that's what the delay was early in the game. A lot of people thought that it was helmet communications, and I guess helmet communications was a part of it, but it was not actually the helmets. It was just the fact that headsets completely were unable to be used, at least for a small portion at the very beginning of that game, due to Western Kentucky not being able to use theirs. So just wanted to throw that little tidbit out there. If you weren't able to see the press conference that DeBoer put on after the game, that's what he kind of mentioned after the game, as to what happened. So the way I want to talk about this game is I want to go through the offense and then through the defense, and I'm going to go through the good, the bad, and then the things that I still have questions about, right? So we're going to start with the offense. First off, if I had to give you like a one sentence thoughts on the offense, is that we're super explosive and they have a lot of ways that they can be successful, right? When we're talking about the good of this offense, I thought that the plays were called to take best advantage of the personnel that we have. The best way that I could say something like that is when you looked at like Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe was not asked to be a pocket passer. It was very clear that there were plays that were set up to be able to use his talent of being able to run the football, right? Two of his running touchdowns were, one of them was there was a zero blitz on, and Jalen, they pull both guards. The guards pick up the blitzers. Jalen runs free into the end zone. The other one, Jalen does a fake pitch and then hits an absolute burst, which personally was probably the fastest acceleration that I've seen Jalen do in person. I was at most of the home games last year and have been watching him, obviously, his whole career. And there was a burst that happened in that fake pitch play that just was like a immediate burst to get to the end zone. I thought that was one of the best plays of Jalen. But to me, it just felt like DeBoer and the offensive strategy just in general was fully to take advantage of who is successful and what they're successful at, right? On the play that Kendrick Law scores, it was Jalen does a good job avoiding the sack, stepping up in the pocket, kept his eyes downfield, got it to his playmaker, and Law's a really shifty, quick guy. You get it to him in space and let the playmaker make the play, right? Perfect example. I thought a lot of the plays were really, really great. I thought that the play calling in general was awesome. I also thought that there were a few throws that Jalen had made that he made better than he had made most of last year, right? There was the play that I just mentioned where he avoided the sack and stepped up and threw to Kendrick Law. I think Jalen could have probably run the ball maybe 10 yards, but he throws it to Law, and Law gets a touchdown from about 25 out, right? Then you have the play where he throws it deep. Obviously, the deep ball that he hits Ryan Williams on to score the touchdown was great. But actually, the second touchdown to Ryan Williams is the one that kind of I like the best. They have 5 guys rushing. Jalen steps up in a clean pocket, throws a perfect strike to Ryan Williams, gets it in stride. Ryan Williams gets the ball, and then obviously does what Ryan Williams does. And we'll talk more about him later on when we kind of talk about my current players of the game. But he scores on the touchdown after breaking a tackle. I thought that it was absolutely awesome. Both of those throws, in my opinion, were like perfect examples of Jalen, doing what he needed to do to get the ball in his playmaker's hand and then kind of let them do the rest. But we didn't ask him to stand back in the pocket and be Mac Jones because he's not, right? He's an athlete. We need to put him in spaces to showcase his athleticism, and I thought that he did an incredible job of that. I thought that the game plan was really, really good from that standpoint. The other place that I thought was absolutely incredible on the offensive side of the end, if we're still talking about the good, is the running backs. When I did the preview episode, I talked about how my question marks for the game were Jalen, the receivers, and the offensive line. I thought that the running backs would be good. And honestly, they were better than advertised, right? They were better than we would expect. Jan Miller and Justice Haynes looked to be the best running back duo in the country. They absolutely were explosive. Both of them had super long runs for touchdowns. They were hitting gaps. They were just kind of scoring at will. They were doing whatever they needed to do with the ball in their hands. They were catching, I think they both caught a pass out of the backfield. It just, overall, the running back duo was absolutely incredible, and you can't say enough good things about them. Our running backs, for this season are going to be absolutely stacked, and I thought that they've been great. When we're talking about the bad, there were a few things on the offensive end that I thought we were going to have to clean up, right? There was a bad snap that led to a fumble. I have to mention the snap. We have, horror thoughts from last year. I think that this was a miscommunication between the center and the quarterback. I don't think that this is something we're going to foresee going on, because I thought the snap placement on most of the snaps were completely fine. This specific snap, DeBoer talked about it after the game, that it to him felt like Parker and Jalen were just kind of on a – Parker was making one read, Jalen was making another, and the snap just maybe didn't get in the right spot, and it went over Jalen's head. The other one is Jalen had a fumble that ended up causing – or he actually had a separate fumble. That one was a fumble that we lost. There was another fumble that Jalen got, but this one he was able to get back. But in my opinion, this was a poor play call. Because what happened, and DeBoer mentioned this is the first time he's ever seen this happen, but what happened was your guard and center, left guard and left center, and your center, both lost their helmet. So Booker and Brailsford both lost their helmet, so you had to replace your guard and your center. We'll talk about it here in a second, but Caden Proctor also was injured in pregame, so you also had a brand new left tackle, and this was on the first Alabama possession. So the first possession, you've got a brand new left tackle, brand new left guard, brand new center for this play, and Alabama called a pass play. And the line just broke down. Jalen got hit from his blind side, lost the ball. In my opinion, that was just a bad play call. I understand that, it was, you were behind the chains and you were trying to throw the ball and kind of get ahead of that. But I think you got to have a quicker pass. You got to have one that, is much quicker to develop, because knowing the lineman that you're missing in that play call, right? I understand that under normal circumstances, maybe you're okay with taking a shot, because I thought that, like the shot we took for Ryan Williams, I thought was a perfect timing. But I think in that specific moment, because of who you were missing on the line, you can't take that shot, at least personally. I don't think that we should have taken the shot. We ended up taking it. Jalen does get the fumble back. We punt it. No harm, no foul. We end up getting the interception the next drive from Western Kentucky, so it's completely okay. But long term, I think that's something we just have to think about from a coaching staff standpoint. The other thing that I'll mention, if we're talking about the battle on the offensive side, is penalties do seem to be a little bit of an issue. We got called for a few holds. There were 7 penalties in the game, which isn't an insane amount, but it definitely did seem to, stop a couple of plays, something that I think we need to just kind of keep an eye on. It's not like the worst I've ever seen it. Alabama had some games where we had 12 and 13 penalties, so it's definitely not the worst we've even seen in the last 5 years, but it's definitely something you're going to want to keep an eye on, especially when you play tougher competition. To have 7 penalties in this game that got out of hand, if that gets to be a closer game, that could definitely impact the game much more. And then the place that I, still have questions, and I've just mentioned Caden Proctor. So Proctor went out. I have heard from a friend of mine that has some sources in the athletic department that he has heard that it may not be too bad. We'll see. When Coach was asked about it in the post-game press conference, he specifically said that they were going to have to look at it today. Right, I'm recording this on Sunday, that he was going to be looking at it today, and hopefully we would know more this week. But, what I have heard seems to think that Proctor may be okay. But with that, Elijah Pritchett had to shift from right tackle to left tackle. Wilcom Formby ended up winning that battle. We talked a lot about who was going to be your starting right tackle. It looks like Formby won the battle. So Pritchett moved from the right to the left side for this game. So it did cause a few issues, including that sack I was talking about earlier. But I do think that fumble may have also been caused by the missing center and guard as well. The other place that I, have some questions, and I think that DeBoer even mentioned it, so I think he's, intuitively aware of this. But I want to see us be able to sustain longer drives. The explosiveness is awesome, and it's something that I hope that this team, has moving forward. You're never going to be upset if the team is explosive, but the ability to sustain a drive, to chew out the clock, to give your defense some rest is something we're going to need down the line, right? I'm not saying you're going to need it next game. I'm not even going to say you're needing it against Wisconsin. You may not even need it against Georgia, right? But at some point this season, you're going to need to be able to sustain a drive and get your defense some rest. And that's something that I would like to see. They were able to sustain a drive later on in the game when some of the backups came in, but the starters, we didn't have a lot of sustained drives. Now, that's partially because of the explosiveness, right? We had a couple of runs that broke free for touchdowns. So, it's kind of two sides of the same coin. You can't be too upset about being explosive, and I'm definitely not. But it's just something, the ability to sustain a longer drive is something I would like to see, because in the first half, Alabama had under 7 minutes time of possession, whereas Western Kentucky was sitting around 22 or 23. Now, that evened out where Alabama ended up actually winning the time of possession battle, mostly due to some of the fourth quarter drives where we held the ball the majority of the quarter. But like I said, it is something that I would like to see us be able to sustain a longer drive. Not something I need to see this next game, but I do want to see it, obviously, moving forward. So that's kind of what my thoughts are on the offense. There were a lot of really, really good things that we saw. We had huge games out of Ryan Williams. I thought that Jalen took what the defense gave him. We didn't call a ton of pass plays, maybe 15 or so, with Jalen scrambling on 5 or 6 of them, and then I think he only completed or attempted 9 passes and was 7 of 9. So it's a standpoint of we didn't try to stand back and throw the ball a ton. I think part of that was by design. Part of that's obviously just how the game went by. But there's not a ton we can take away. But I definitely do have some takeaways, and that's kind of what my thoughts are. I still have question marks about the offensive line. I think I still will until we face some better competition and see the if Caden Proctor is fully able to come back, as I expect he will be, see what the actual starting offensive line does look like, with Proctor in there and everybody not injured. That is something I am looking to see. So that's kind of my thoughts on the offensive line. I do think that the offense was super explosive and was great. I was very happy with what I saw, but definitely have some questions kind of that I want to see answered as we kind of move into next week. So we're going to shift over to the defense, and the defense, admittedly, I had the most questions about coming into this season. I believed in DeBoer, and I believed in our offense. I believed in Nick Sheridan. I believed that they would be able to have a game plan. I thought that DeBoer was a good enough offensive coach that he was going to make the most out of his players. The defense is the place where I had the most questions. Not to say I didn't believe in Kane Womack, because I absolutely did. I thought that anybody that has the ability to go up to a head coach and as successful as he has been, that he would be able to get the defense right. But I wasn't so sure that he would be able to get it what felt like as fixed as quickly as it was. Because the defense yesterday looked like one of the best defenses Alabama's had in a while. The defense yesterday reminded you of some of the Alabama defenses of old. The defense yesterday just looked absolutely incredible, quite frankly. And like I said, we're going to go through the good, the bad, and the places where I still have some questions. So on the good, I have to start with Keon Sabb. A lot of talk this offense was made about the losses in the transfer portal of Isaiah Bond and Caleb Downs. Isaiah Bond seems to have been immediately replaced by Ryan Williams, the absolute stud 17-year-old freshman. And in my opinion, Caleb Downs was completely replaced by Keon Sabb. Alabama loses a top safety in the portal and picks up Michigan safety, a top safety in the portal. And Keon Sabb is plug and play and looks absolutely incredible and a fit for Kalen DeBoer's swarm defense. And Kane Womack's swarm defense. Womack mentioned in his press conference about his defense that safeties have a lot of eyes on the quarterback and that they make a lot of plays on the ball. And, apparently there have been plenty of people that have talked to Womack in the kind of lead up, and he had mentioned that Sabb has been looking excellent. And every bit of excellent as he looked in the fall camp and in spring, he looks here, right? Keon Sabb looks absolutely incredible. He made 2 great plays on the ball. One of them, it really looked like Finley just didn't pay attention to the zones, quite frankly, because he threw it right at Sabb's zone that first pick. The second pick was just all Sabb, in my opinion. Sabb made a great play on the ball, had eyes on the quarterback, was able to read and react, and really made a great play on the ball, and then a really good return to set up great field position. I really thought that our defensive backs in general, it was a place where I mentioned I had the most questions coming into the game yesterday. And I thought that the defensive backs, by and large, looked absolutely incredible. There weren't any huge busted coverage plays. There weren't any, just guys running free. Not to say that, you expect to see it, but that's something that, first game in a new system, and a team that likes to air the ball out, it was something that I definitely wanted to see, especially since early on we picked off Finley so early that it was very clear that Western Kentucky was going to have to throw the ball. They were not going to be able to run the ball to be successful in this game. And so with them airing it out, you still didn't see any busted coverages. And so I thought that was awesome. Like I said, there's definitely going to be things that they have to clean up. There always will be. But I thought that for a first game, the defensive backs looked great. The other place that I think that, Alabama is absolutely stacked when we're talking about that running back core on the offense, it's the linebacking core on the defense. Deontay Lawson and Jihad Campbell look incredible. Jihad Campbell was flying around off the ball, was looking absolutely great. Both of them had 9 tackles. They were just flying around. I mean, simply put, both guys looked great. I thought that the linebacking core looked as good as you could have asked for, and just overall was absolutely thoroughly impressed with what I saw from those guys on the pass and on the run. So, simply put, the linebackers looked great, and I think that we're in very good hands with Lawson and Campbell. The other thing that I want to mention on the good side before we transition over to the bad is that, you hear when Kane Womack talked about his defense, he calls it a swarm defense. And the best way to describe what the defense did yesterday was swarming, right? When you saw a run, everybody was in on the tackle. When you saw a pass, if one guy missed a tackle, other people converged in on it. They were swarming, they were flying around, they were hitting hard. It really felt like that defense was really playing as a group, right? It wasn't one guy in space making a tackle, and if that guy misses the tackle, they're going to run free for 50 yards. It was, if you miss it, I got your back, right? That's really what it felt like, and overall, I thought that the defense played absolutely incredible, especially in Womack's first game. We're going to face better teams. We're going to face better quarterbacks. We're going to face better running backs. But I thought in game 1, we looked incredible, right? I was very happy with what I saw out of the defense, and I thought that it was an incredible showing, obviously, to hold the shutout, given they had a missed field goal, but hold the shutout nonetheless. Absolutely great. The second pick that Sabb had, they were driving, looking like they were going to score, and Sabb picks it off at about the 15-yard line, I believe, and then gets the long return to bring it back. On the bad side, I'm going to be very nitpicky just because I thought the defense looked so good. The places that I would be kind of nitpicky on the defense, if I had to give a bad, just because I want to be, give good and bad on both sides, is Deontay Lawson did have a drop pick. It didn't hurt us at all in this game, and, it didn't really impact the final score at all. But in the future, it is something that you're just going to want to see, right? He made a perfect play. He read the quarterback's eyes great. He was in the right position. He just didn't convert on the actual pick. It looked like it would have been a pick 6 based on the location of where he was and, the open lane that he had to the end zone. So, like I said, it didn't cost us at all in this game, but it is something that I would like to see him just kind of reel that in and be able to close even if he doesn't score, just to complete the pick is something that I would have liked to have seen. The other place that if I had to say bad, this kind of goes hand in hand with the long drives that we talked about on the offensive side, where the offense wasn't really giving long drives. So that may be part of the reason why. But Western Kentucky did sustain a couple of longer drives. They had that 8-play drive, which is the one that ended in Sab's pick that I just talked about. And then they also had a 21-play drive that ended in downs, that they ended up just, having a turnover on downs. Both of those, I think, may have been coupled with the fact that we had a quick strike offense and the defense was playing a lot. But having somebody sustain a longer drive is just something that you don't love to see on the defensive end. It felt like we had a little bit at times, especially with that 21 play and that 8-play drive, of like a bend but don't break mentality, which I don't have any problem with, because at the end of the day, they didn't give up 6, and that's exactly what you want to see. But like I said, that's just something, if I have to give a bad, I was being a little nitpicky, of course, and I know that, but that if I had to give a bad, that's what I would say, that we did give up a couple of longer drives. Like I said, I do think it's partially due to the offense. I think that there's plenty of reasons why, and I don't think that it's going to be an issue moving forward, but it's definitely something I want to keep an eye on. Then on the place that I have questions, again, this is also going to be a little nitpicky. The question that I have is that our defensive line seemed to do okay against the run, but Western Kentucky got into passing fairly quickly, right? We knew that they were a mostly pass offense, and a pretty explosive passing offense, but we also knew that, or if you watch the game, you realize that because of Alabama scoring quickly and the 2 interceptions, they were up 21-0 pretty early in the first quarter. And so because of that, if Western Kentucky wanted to have any chance or any semblance of a game, they were going to have to throw the ball to get back into the game. And so I thought that their only runs that they really had were to try to have some level of balance, and it wasn't really, right? Early they were running Finley some, and I think they had a little bit of success with it. They had a little bit of success with a few draw plays. Alabama was able to stop those pretty quickly. But it's just something that when we go up against a team that has a much better rushing attack, I do have some questions about the defensive line, just because we've got some new faces on that line. Not to say that they're going to be bad. They may be perfect. It's just the only place that I kind of have questions immediately following this game, because I thought that on the passing side, I thought that our pass rush, our linebacking core, our defensive backs, by and large, all looked incredible. So if I had to give one place that I have questions about leaving this game, it's going to be the going against the run in terms of like defensive line. Like I said, they may be completely fine, but we just didn't see a lot of it in this game. So if I have to say something that I have questions about following, that's probably the answer. I'll quickly cover the special teams. I'm not going to go full good, bad, and questions. Just want to mention a couple of things about it. In terms of specialists, it looks like Connor Talty is actually going to be doing our kickoffs. It's more of just a statement. I didn't realize that Graham Nicholson was only going to be doing extra points and field goals, but it looks like Nicholson, the transfer kicker, is just doing extra points and field goals, and Talty's doing kickoffs. My gut says that probably has to do with Talty may have a slightly bigger leg, so he just has a little bit stronger leg. I don't know that for certain, but it's just something to kind of note. Cole Adams looks to be our starting return guy. Adams looked great back there. I think that it would not surprise me if at some point this season he returns one for a touchdown. He's really shifty with the ball in his hands. I thought that there were even a few moments in the game where I thought he was even going to break one loose in this last game. I think that Adams looked really great back there, really sure-handed. There was one that he didn't fair catch that ended up leading to a block in the back penalty that I thought he maybe should have fair caught because of how close the defenders were by the time he caught it. And really the only way he wasn't going to get immediately tackled was the block in the back that ended up kind of breaking him free, but obviously got called back. So that's one thing that I would like to see, obviously, him call that fair catch there so we kind of saved the penalty, because I think the player that blocked in the back was because of Adams not doing the fair catch, and I think he was just trying to not get his guy killed. But I think that Adams did a really good job back there. And then Burnup's one of the best punters in the country. I mean, there's nothing else you can say about it. He had a couple of huge punts. We didn't call on him a ton, but when we did, he really flipped the field, and I thought that he looked great back there. So really proud of Burnup, proud of all of our specialists. Like I said, not going to give good, bad, and questions, but just wanted to mention them as well, because I thought that by and large, all three facets of the game really looked great on Saturday. So I want to go over my players of the game for this week, and I'm sure there will be guys that are repeated over the course of the season, and that's okay, right? Just want to give some shout outs to a couple of guys across the different position groups and who I think personally had some of the best games. I'm going to give it to one of them. I'm going to give it to Milroe. I thought that in his first game in the new offense, his ability to, step up in the pocket and make the good throws, also, show the burst on the rushing. I thought that he looked great. Ryan Williams, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, 17 years old. I mean, what else can you say? He looked absolutely great. Jan Miller and Justice Haynes, like I said, this running back duo is going to be one of the best in the country. They both broke out super long runs. I thought that they looked fine in pass protection. Just both guys played great. I mean, there's nothing else I can really say about it. I thought that Jan Miller and Justice Haynes both looked great. Keon Sabb, 2 picks in your first game in an Alabama uniform. Awesome. I mean, what else can you say about that? And then Jihad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. Even though Lawson dropped the pick, he still had 9 tackles and was flying around on the defensive end. He still had one of the best games out there. Him and Campbell both combined, both had the 9 tackles, as I mentioned, and just were really flying around on the defensive end and shoring up the middle of your defense. And what else can you say about that, right? I thought that by and large, all 3 facets of this game were very successful and the team played together and as a group. And that's what you want to see, right? Do you have questions going into next week? Sure, right? But that's okay, right? It's only game 1. This is not the end of the season. Having question marks going into the next game is completely fine. We're going to talk about those, right? You're facing a better quarterback than you faced this past week, right? I think that the quarterback for South Florida is much better. I think that South Florida just has some better athletes. I think that South Florida, I don't think will be a full test to show our full potential, but they're definitely going to be a better test than Western Kentucky, right? So I think that is, kind of you play the next game, and then you got Wisconsin, which didn't look great in their first game, but still you're at that point facing a Power 5 opponent, so you're getting another better level of athlete, right? So I think by and large we have definitely some answers. We still have a few questions, and we will cover those games as they come. But all in all, a 63-point win in your first game as an Alabama head coach in the lights in Bryant-Denny, you got to be happy with that. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Like I said, just wanted to cover and recap the game. Hope everyone has enjoyed. Like I said, if you do appreciate the content, would appreciate if you would comment and like and subscribe down in the bottom. Like I said, if you have any questions at all, throw them down there and I'm happy to answer. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.